Okay. Gary, do you have, you don't have your email on that laptop?
No.
Sent it out originally.
Beg pardon? I didn't catch that last part, Scott.
No, I just said you sent it out originally, so I just assumed you'd have it there on your laptop.
No, I don't have it on the laptop. I don't do emails on the laptop.
All right, are we ready to get rolling?
I think we're ready.
Yep.
All right. Well, this meeting is being called to address the smoking policy that has been distributed now several times and revised by legal counsel. Ron, you want to confirm that we've got our quorum?
I believe we do have a quorum present electronically as well as in person. And I can also officially state that we did serve notice to the meeting, and we posted that information in the lobby as well as sent it out to all owners. I think we're good to go.
Okay. Well, let's consider the board meeting started at 9:30 then, and we'll go ahead and get started. So for everyone's benefit, as I indicated in the last board meeting, we had distributed a change to the rules and regs that would affect the smoking policy, as well as a minor revision around background checks. That initial revision went out without Christina initially blessing it, simply because she was out. So upon her return, we had her go back and look at the wording we selected. She tweaked it a bit. We redistributed that a little more than 10 days ago for comments from the owners. We did receive, if I recall, roughly 30 comments on the initial draft, and then I think we got 6 or so on this revision. Ron, you want to just quickly summarize the comments that we received?
Sure. Comment number 1 was excellent and very well done. Comment number 2 was love it, thanks so much. Number 3 was I don't agree with requesting medical records or providing documentation for medical use of marijuana. Next comment was bravo, I like every word and every sentence. The next comment was this is a good fit and balances the issue. And the last comment was you can't change the rules and regulations without an owner vote. The board needs to be very careful as they could be sued.
Well, and that Christina has looked at that. These are rules and regs. This is a board decision. It's not an owner vote decision. That's why we put it out for comment, which I think we have sufficiently done. As we have indicated from the prior meeting, while we have several hundred owners, I think we've got a total of about 40 responses, most of which have been in favor of some kind of modification of the smoking. Obviously we've had some issues with. What we tried to do was take the comments that we received on the first round and come up with a compromise that would, number one, ensure that we do not have a problem with smoke permeating throughout the lodge, as we have had over the last 9 months or so, while still giving some freedom for those individuals who do smoke, and allow for designated smoking areas, as well as individuals to be able to smoke on their own private decks in the clusters. Unfortunately, because of the nature of the lodge, the shared doorways, the common hallways, the compromise that we made for the lodge was to come up with a designated smoking area. We did get somewhat of a confirmation, although we haven't identified the exact space, but that from Dave that we would likely put that designated smoking area somewhere in the northwest corner of the parking lot. And that still needs to be finalized, but we wanted to make sure and get this discussion taken care of so that we could move forward, given that we are rapidly approaching, or I guess already in the middle of the higher risk fire season. So I guess at this stage I'll ask for a motion to accept the changes as they've been made, and then we can move forward with discussion.
make a motion to accept the proposed rule changes as worded and presented to the ownership.
A second.
I'll second.
Okay. Any discussion from the board?
This is
I'd like to
Eric.
just, go ahead.
This is Eric. I just wanted to elaborate a little bit on the last comment from one of the owners. The comment was made, and by the way, we've got about a dozen people here in the room, Scott, so we'll maybe have some feedback from owners. The comment was you can't change rules and regulations without an owner vote, and then it goes on to say something else. Just to be very clear, we have two sets of documents in our association here, and I know we have one first-time owner here. We do have governing documents, which are those documents, those rules, those conditions that can only be changed by an affirmative vote of the entire ownership. In some cases, that's 51%. In some cases, that's actually 2/3 of the ownership. Rules and regulations are the purview of the board. They can be changed by the board. And in fact, the document that we're discussing today can be in place for as little as 30 days. If the board decides they want to rewrite these next week, we would go through the same publication process and put out to you guys for your comment and your feedback, and we would do another vote. Rules and regulations are a movable object, and so just to clarify that point in terms of that owner's comment.
Thanks for clarifying, Eric. All right, any other discussion from the board?
I want to just add a couple of things. I think, first off, we've been very transparent in this process, which we need to be. Secondly, there's been some concerns, I think, from people about legal issues, and I think we've addressed those concerns by having legal involved, obviously, and giving it a good scrubbing. And then I think just speaking for me, my comments and what I've seen people write, what they submitted, and then as well as talking and having some conversations with these same people, we tried to really get a balance, realizing that we'll never have the perfect policy. We're not going to get everyone to sign off on it. There'll be some people that aren't happy with it, but I think as Scott mentioned, we want to try to move in a direction to make some improvements for everyone, and I hope that people will remember that and look at that from that standpoint, because again, we're not going to get 100% satisfaction, but I think in this draft, we've hopefully addressed a lot of the issues that need to be addressed, and there's no reason that this couldn't be changed at some point down the road, 2, 3, 4 years from now as well. So I think we've done the best we can at this point, and again, I think the transparency issue has been good, and hopefully we can move forward.
Yeah, thanks for that, and I'll second that. I mean, and I've been on record as saying, this is a kind of a personal liberty issue that, I'm not exactly 100% comfortable that it's something that, we should be defining, but with the experience we've had over the last nine months, I think we have a responsibility to ensure that we don't have negative impact to the property, as well as mitigating the risk. So I think we came to a reasonable compromise, and certainly appreciate every bit of feedback that we've gotten from the owners, as well as the efforts from the board and our legal team to make sure to craft this in a way that is about as fair as we think we can be. So, any other comments from the board? Okay. Since I'm not in the room, I'll ask for owner comments. Eric, you want to help drive the train there?
Sure. Name and room number, please.
Brian Martinez, 337.
Thank you, Brian.
I agree with you that that the board does have the right for the rules change. However, there's two different things. I found this article. I'll give you a copy of it. And this is an article that was published in the Community Association Institute Monthly Digest in February 2015. If you go to the second page, second paragraph, it says, if an association wants to ban smoking, some methods are more airtight than others. One method is to have the board of directors pass a rule, which is what you guys are talking about. Another is to amend the declaration. However, while rules are subject to judicial review for reasonableness if challenged by an owner, declaration amendments are more likely to withstand challenge because courts can review those only for whether they're unconstitutional or contrary to public policy. So I think this point here is like, if we just do a rules change, then we're subject to being taken to court, which will cost us more legal fees. Where if we do the declaration change, it's pretty much airtight. That was there was a case back in 06, and it was in Colorado, Schwab versus Heritage Hills.
Yes.
And they talk about that down here and there, and said they did make a declaration change because it had to do with smoking cigarettes, and the smoke was going into everybody else's room. So the association made a declaration and changed it, and then the people didn't like it, so they took them to court, and the courts upheld it because it was a declaration change. Now, however, if it would have been a rule change, they might not have won that. It's hard to say because they did the declaration.
Okay.
And so that's what this article's all about, and saying you guys can do this but there's airtight ways, and I just want to keep us protected because somebody could still take you to court if you do a declaration, but chances are it's going to get thrown out.
Yeah. What it does state is that there is now case law, because it said the court ruled that although it's not illegal, it's not a right, and you can't control smoke from permeating into other places unintended, which infringes on the rights of other people.
Correct. But the declaration requires a vote, and that's why it's airtight, because that's where you have the board members deciding versus the whole community voting it in. So if it goes to court, it'll
I think
probably get tossed.
it's fair to say that the board looked at both options. We understand, and we certainly understand the reference that you made in this document. As Scott mentioned in his comments, we're kind of tiptoeing into this. I mean, there's smoke issues, there's fire issues, there's a lot of things that have happened in the last 24 months or less that frankly weren't here for the first 38 years. And we're just not sure we're smart enough with 12 months of experience to write a perfect document. There's nothing that precludes us from a year from now, after having lived with these words, to say, okay, let's put this out for a referendum to the ownership. The other thing I would mention is, despite what was in the owner's comment, the first option for any owner is not a lawsuit. Our bylaws require, and that's one that is, our bylaws require that any dispute with the board goes to mediation. So we're not going to court anytime soon over this issue. And so the legal expense associated with that is somewhat diminished.
I think in the initial comments, if I recall too, there was nobody that said they would sue. There was one owner said if we pass it, he's going to sell and move away.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that was, and part of that was our compromise, because initially it was a total ban. And in our discussions, and that was part of the compromise is, okay, he lived in one of the outlying clusters, so we said, if you have a deck that's unique to your unit, be it front or back, then we would allow you to smoke outside.
Yeah, that's correct. We did start down this path with a total prohibition mindset until we got the initial feedback. And believe me, we worked very closely with Christina in the legal team, and to Eric and Rick's point, we felt like this was the best compromise, and as such, move forward with the rules and regs. But we do understand the case law, and we did look very closely at what the best compromise might be.
Any other comment from owners present?
1, 2, 2, 3. Does this include vaping?
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
I get to read it in detail before.
Yes.
Yes.
Good.
Specific mention. Smoking is defined as, and I can read: inhaling, exhaling, breathing, burning, vaping, carrying or possessing any lighted cigar, cigarette, pipe, hookah, electronic breathing device, electronic delivery service, or any other lighted or heated tobacco or other plant product etc. So it's a defined term. Yes, our attorney's been busy.
Yeah.
And by the way, for those who don't know, we mentioned Christina before. That is the Homeowners Association attorney. Any other comments from the audience?
Mary Keys, 744. I'm just curious to know a little more about the background check. I mean, what kind of background check is the board going to do, and what triggers a background check?
Really what we did there was, we've always had the power to do background checks on our tenants, and do so 100% of the time on any long-term rentals. Given some of the circumstances that we had over the past year, we felt like it made sense to clean up the language a bit, so that if we, as a board, felt like we had somebody or an owner that we needed to find out a little more background information on, that we at our expense could go ahead and get a background check ordered. It's more just cleaning up the rules so that we have clarity that we do have the right to do that if we feel like somebody could be perceived as a threat, or we just feel a little concerned with some issues we might be having.
So is that a criminal background check, or are you checking medical records? What are you checking? Financial?
Well, you can't get medical records under HIPAA. It would be a criminal background check typically.
Yes.
Mary Keys, 744 again. Going back to your HIPAA comment, is there any concerns about HIPAA violations regarding somebody having to show their medical records in order to use medical marijuana?
No, that's what the medical profession is empowered by the state to do, is to provide those documents. So there is no question that you have a medical marijuana need.
So the board falls under that. So HIPAA's, it's not a violation for board members to say, hey, owner and such has a medical card, and here's the reason for it.
Yes, remember there's lots of ways in Colorado. Cities, counties can preclude marijuana. The city, large cities have excluded the use of marijuana within their city limits. Colorado Springs, for example. So Colorado law does not blanket give everybody in the state every right under the Colorado law. It gives local and entities like ourselves some authority and some flexibility.
Thank you for that explanation.
Any other comments from the audience? Questions from the audience?
I just want to thank the board for seriously looking at this. And I mean, I'm one that's for no smoking, but I think this is a great start and a great option. Being a retired hospice nurse, I've seen many people with the effects of smoking and what it has done to them. So I just want to thank y'all for taking the time, because I know it's taken a lot of time to work on this.
And two, this was not as a result of a single incident. We had several things that, kind of came to our attention that owners brought forward subsequent to the fire. And so we thought, it's a very good time for us to act.
Thank you.
Alan Woods, 501. So what is the plan to enforce all this?
Did you hear the question, Scott?
Sorry, I couldn't hear the question there. No, I couldn't hear it.
What is the plan to enforce?
Well, obviously, as I think I mentioned in the meeting, our goal is to try to curb behavior and allow for responsible smoking and obviously disposal of cigarette butts and that kind of thing. Certainly if we see an issue or if we have owners that come to us and say, hey, I'm finding all these cigarette butts, they happen to be behind this unit, then it'll go through any other rules and regs issue where the owner will be issued a warning with subsequent, fines tied to that if the problem persists. It's no different than any other rule. It's no different from somebody having a bunch of junk on their back patio that they don't clean up.
Martinez 337. Now, just because they're supposed to be, we build a cabana out here and they're supposed to be smoking out there, certain people are probably going to still smoke wherever they want to. How do we find those people? I can answer my own question. I'd like to suggest we put some cameras like by the doorways on the north deck. The cameras are cheap. You already got a system in. That way, if cigarette butts are showing up there, you can go back and look at the tapes and find out who's doing it.
Well,
yeah, that's certainly a consideration. I mean, we've already talked about, putting signage up more so than, better than what we have now, where we just have somebody printing something and sticking on a window. That's certainly a consideration. I think anytime you start talking cameras, we have to make sure that, that legal agrees that it's okay that we stick cameras in those places. But you're right. We have them today.
I think, again, the spirit of the board, and Scott has used this word more than anybody, we're trying to encourage those folks who feel a need to smoke responsibly. We're not, it's an addiction, and we're not trying to beat up people who have an addiction problem. We're trying to not to limit that impact on our total community. And unfortunately, and some people may not feel comfortable with this, the most likely enforcement is going to be through fellow owners. You're the ones, we don't have 100 people. We don't have people watch film 24 hours a day. And so owners can't help police this. It's not going to be as effective as if they do.
Okay, you may have just answered my question, but so last year when we were evacuated, we went to Telluride, and there's a big hotel there, and I noticed an individual right outside the hotel in very thick, dry grass, standing in the middle of that smoking. I went to the front desk and reported that, and they did absolutely nothing about it. Subsequently, after I returned here, I was looking out my window one night, and I saw basically the same thing happening here. Past the parking lot, someone was standing in the grass smoking a cigarette, right after the fires just barely been put out. And after my experience in Telluride, I just said, I'm wasting my breath. Is that going to be the case here, or is it going to be taken seriously if I call the front desk and say, hey, there's somebody out there in the parking lot smoking, it's causing a fire?
Can I answer that?
Sure.
Yeah, go ahead, Ron.
Yeah. Yes, first off, the enforcement issues really will remain the same. And I can assure you, being over rules and regulations, that we do have people that report things, which is great. That's what we want. And so I don't see any change in that at all. And I think we have in place through our fines and through our review process that we don't just rush into this and issue fines to people. We'll look at the situation, talk to the people that were involved. We've got 3 different levels of review for our complaints that are received. So it's, again, very transparent, but we have a process in place, and I think it allows us to look at each situation, and then if there is a violation, issue a fine. If there's not, maybe it's just an education issue, that's fine. We can do that as well. But I would anticipate no change in the enforcement practice, because what we have now works, and I, again, can assure you that people do call things in, and that's what we want them to do. Call the front desk, notify Gary, call me, email me, whatever. I mean, there's enough of us around that can help. But I would, again, anticipate that the enforcement process works, but we need everyone on board with it.
And the other thing I think it probably is worth noting is, keep in mind the entire Glacier property is no smoking. So if we got people wandering around smoking cigarettes outside of Taco property, out beyond the parking lots and whatnot, they're breaking a Glacier rule as well.
Tricia Layfield, 334701. I just wanted to ask when this becomes effective and how soon you expect to have the gazebo for people to smoke.
It basically would become effective as soon as the board passes this particular motion. Okay. As far as the gazebo, there's obviously expense and construction that we need to get bid out. I can't speak to any timelines. I don't know if Dave's in there, but I got to believe it'll take us a couple of months to get it done.
Okay, thank you.
Martinez 337. Well, if it's going to take effect immediately, then we're going to have to probably paint off the smoking area out in the parking lot.
Yeah, we'll definitely need to have some accommodation for that. And again, it didn't make sense to spend the money and do anything until we got, past this comment period and vote. If we may, if it makes sense, I don't know what everybody's thoughts are on the board, but I mean, we could certainly put an effective date out there if we wanted to. But part of our goal here was to get this done before we got too far into the summer dry months.
I think we're kind of waist deep in rules and regulations authorities at this point. Let's maybe try and bring it back up to the board level. We've got a motion. Are there any other questions regarding the motion itself?
Bob Lenise, Unit 595, High Point. I noticed out in High Point, a lot of the contractors that are coming on property doing work and so forth will be out there smoking outside, and I constantly find cigarette butts on the ground in front of my unit from the contractors, because I know most of my neighbors don't smoke. What is the board, and how can the board enforce rules when it involves contractors that owners bring on property?
Well, I guess the first part of that is these rules do apply to contractors. By definition, they're included in the documentation. Scott, you want to address the second part of that question?
Well, obviously we have to put the contractors on notice. The owners need to be put on notice. We need to have signage. I mean, this isn't going to happen overnight. There are some things we're going to have to do to make sure to inform people that, hey, this is a change, and it's going to take a little bit of time to get all of the that word out, get signage in place. This is new to us. So ultimately we'll have to make sure to explain that, and maybe it's something that Dave explains to any contractors as part of the the approval process. We're going to need to work through exactly how we manage that. But right now we don't even have signs out, and we want to make sure and take the time to get that done.
Thank you.
Terry DeMott, 849. I'm wondering, since renters often seem to be the short-term and perhaps long-term seem to be a part of the problem, is the website clear that Tamarron is a non-smoking, that there is no place that you can smoke with exceptions by the lodge that's available to members?
Well, it is certainly, there's many things that need to be done, as Scott mentioned, in terms of implementation. It's not on the website today because the board hasn't passed it. But yes, we're part of the rollout. Heather's marketing program will have to change slightly. A lot of steps will need to be taken, and that's we'll have to work our way through that.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's no different than a hotel. Let's face it. I mean, I travel all the time. I can't, people have to go out 25, 50 feet from the door. It's going to be the same process, and we're just going to have to work through the implementation.
All right. Call the question. Have I lost Scott?
All right. Not having any further comments, I think we need to. We have a motion. We have a second. Go ahead and move forward with the vote. All in favor of putting the rule in place?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Okay. We get everybody, Ron?
Got it. 7-0.
Okay. All right. Well, I do appreciate everyone's candid feedback. I do also ask and appreciate everybody's patience as we work through this. As we've all indicated, this isn't something that was even on our radar 12 to 15 months ago. It is something that's going to take some time to put in place, and hopefully, the end result is responsible ownership, responsible renters, rentals, and policy that we can work with. So appreciate everyone's time. I don't think there's anything else we need to cover. We comfortable adjourning the meeting, Eric?
Make a move to adjourn the meeting?
I'll second.
All right. I show 9:58.
Got it.
Aye.
All right, meeting is adjourned. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, y'all.
Take care.
It,